All right, so hi everybody, I'm Cristina Cazares-Machado. It's very long. My very long email address is on the slide. I'm the risk manager, obviously under risk management department. I brought Crystal with me today. Like I said, she's our executive assistant. She's going to talk about how to notify risk and what information she needs. So she'll be talking a little bit later on in the PowerPoint. If you ever need anything, if there's any kind of urgent situation, I know many of you already know this, but if it's obviously during normal business hours, you'd call the main risk line, you'd get a hold of Crystal and she'll triage to the appropriate person. And after hours, we've always got somebody on call and you can access that through telecom. All right, and obviously via email, you can call me directly, whatever you need. I gotta throw in some objectives. Are you guys getting CEs for today? All right, so we gotta do this. So we're gonna talk a little bit about professional liability, litigation, medical record, MCPs, consent, how we handle unrepresented patients. I figured I'd throw that in for you guys because I'm sure you deal with that a lot. Some recommendations for the critical care setting, and of course, how to notify risk management. And feel free to stop me at any time if you have a question, I don't mind. All right, so let's first talk about what it means to be a nurse. How many people have read the Nurse Practice Act? Very normal, very normal. It's actually an easy read, but the reason I bring it up is because the Nurse Practice Act is what defines our scope of practice. So in order for us to be the best nurses we can be in caring for our patients, it's really important to understand what our boundaries are and where the next person's boundaries begin so that we can work together well and efficiently for the patient. So I like to throw that in. It's relatively inexpensive. It's an easy read. I have a copy. I'm happy to check them out to people or check it out to people if you want. But it's a good thing to read and have access to periodically. What the Nurse Practice Act does is obviously defines our scope of practice. It has things in there that are designed to protect our patients, ensure their safety. It talks about disease prevention, administration of medications, therapeutic agents, and a lot of it is really based off of the nursing process. So we're following the nursing process practically in everything that we do. We are collecting data. We're critically thinking about that data that we've collected, our physical assessment, our labs, our medications that are ordered for the patient. We're thinking about that in the context of the overall patient and then making a decision. Can I proceed with what I've been asked to do by the physician or nurse practitioner, PA, or do I need to clarify something? Is this something that I need to take to the provider to get clarification on or seek more orders on? So it's all really nursing process driven. Okay, so people always call risk asking if it's okay to do something. We don't give permission. What we do is we listen to you, we take our expertise in terms of hospital policies and procedure, my own knowledge about our scope of practice. We have a medical director. If we need a physician input, we can get that. We have attorneys. So we try to sort of put it all in that context, and what we're doing is we're giving you recommendations. Ultimately, you're the one that's going to make the decision, and we want to help you make as informed a decision as possible so that you feel comfortable with what you're doing. Because not everything is black and white, and most of the time we're having to make these decisions as a treatment team. It's not just nursing, it's physicians, it's case management, social work, so on and so forth. As long as you are working within your scope of practice of your licensure and within the established hospital policies and procedures / any unit-specific guidelines, you're protected. So if you get sued, you are insured for professional liability through the Regents up in Oakland, okay? So if you were to ever have a process server show up at your doorstep or on the floor, they should never do that. Don't take care of it on your own. We are here to help you. That's where we come in, and we can get you representation if that's what's needed and see you through that process, okay? So no one should be handling those things on their own. Use us, that's what we're here for. Okay, so I just talked about that. Important point on this slide are the two last bullet points. So once we've sort of moved through the claims and the litigation process, let's say we end up at a settlement and there's money paid out. The insurance company pays it out on our behalf. If the settlement for a nurse, if there's a nurse involved, if the settlement is in excess of $3,000, UCSD is required to self-report that nurse to the Board of Registered Nursing. Doesn't mean anything bad's going to happen. They're going to review it, but that's not up to us. It's a required self-report. For our physician colleagues, it's $30,000. So my little soapbox moment, we should all be working with our board to ask them to increase that, because $3,000 really is just a small amount. And a settlement doesn't mean fault, doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It's the legal process, and so it's unfortunate that you'd have to go through all of that for $3,000. I mean, $3,000 is not nothing, but still. So litigation. Key point is we can't stop our patients or their families from suing us. That's entirely out of our control. What's in our control is the care that we give to our patients, the quality of the care, and hoping that it's as decent of an experience as it can be. That's all that we can do. Should it come to litigation, that's what risk management is here for. We represent the physicians, nursing, whoever else is named in the suit, and you would be included throughout that process. So it's not like we just take it and you never hear from us again. We're going to work together. We're going to review the care. We're going to review the case and go from there. Okay? So on here I talk about there's literature about what kinds of patients go on to sue. And generally it's those patients, anytime that we allow them to perceive what we're doing as hiding something, or perhaps maybe giving them the feeling that we've done something wrong, that we've made an error, and we're trying to cover that up, those are the patients that end up suing, primarily. It's not the person that you came to work that day, you did your best to take care of their loved one, it didn't turn out the way all of us hoped it would. Sometimes that happens. I mean, we're in the most trusted profession in the world, and the reason we're most trusted is because people don't automatically think that we're going to do something to harm them. It's when we disconnect from the patient and the family and we're not fully transparent. So when there is an error, our policy at UCSD is to disclose that to the patient as soon as possible, no more than 5 days after the event. And that's our commitment to transparency. So if there is an event like that, that's why risk management needs to know as quickly as possible. I'm the person that will work with the attending physician to walk through the disclosure process if they need help with that, and help them to make sure that the documentation's in there. So we're here to help. All right, so medical record, talked a little bit about it. Medical record it's the legal document. It's our sort of chronicle of the care that we give to the patient. You like my clip art? Okay. Obvious things. You want to make sure you include your assessment, any interventions that you develop and implement for the patient. And it's not good enough to say, I did that. You have to talk about what the patient's response was, right? High blood pressure, give blood pressure med, take the blood pressure again, make sure it worked. Simple. If the patient is having concerns or questions, document the efforts that you take. Take credit for the work that you do, take credit for the care that you give. Of course, teaching is very important, and you want to document their understanding of the teaching. Use teachback, because otherwise they're going to go like this, and you're going to think that they are understanding what you're telling them. Things to avoid in documentation. Finger pointing. Here's a classic nursing example, and I would see this all the time on the floor from my staff. Christina, the patient had intractable pain. I paged the first to call 25 times. I paged the resident 5 times. I paged the attending. Nobody ever called back. What did they chart? Page the first to call 25 times, and I understand the motivation to do that. You want to protect yourself. You want to demonstrate within the record that you did your due diligence to advocate for your patient. But it can get twisted around on you. So fast forward to a court case, and that attorney that is questioning you is going to turn that on its head and basically make the entire treatment team look like a bunch of incompetent people, and call your credibility into question. So keep it as simple as possible. Noted patient's pain level, no pain meds available, notified provider. Then when the provider does call you back, you come back and document what the result of that communication was. And remember, and I'm preaching to the choir because you guys are part of those code teams, but You know, ultimately, there's no excuse to wait. Even if that provider's not calling you, we have other avenues. We have our chain of command. We've got rapid response. We've got Code Blue. Use those. Don't wait an hour for somebody to call back. Risk management is the owner of consent, the consent policy, the consent form. I know it's bad. We're working on fixing it. So I got to do a little bit about consent in each presentation that I do. So for us, all we're going to be usually doing is witnessing. So a couple things to remember about witnessing. First and foremost, the role of the witness is to validate that whoever signed that form, that's who they say they are. Okay, so if you have intubated, sedated patient, you have a family member sign, you're validating that that family member is who they say they are. You don't have to have them show your ID, their ID to you, but that's all that we're validating. There's a couple more things we should be doing. First and foremost, talk to patient or family, whichever is appropriate, depending on situation. Tell us in your own words what procedure is going to be done. That's a hint as to whether or not they really absorbed what the provider told them, because this is informed consent. The patient or the family needs to be able to weigh the risks and benefits and decide on their own, make an informed decision if they want to go forward or not. So tell me in your own words the procedure that you're going to have done. Did you get a chance to ask are there any other questions you have? Because that's required of the provider when they get informed consent. They need to give the patient, family, opportunity to ask questions and get the answers that they need so that they can make an informed decision. At any point along the way, if you're getting the feeling like the person that is going to be signing that consent form maybe doesn't have capacity, maybe there's some cognitive impairment or some psychosocial things going on, and you think you're feeling like they're not really getting it, that's a reason to stop and sort of let's rethink our approach and see what else we can do in terms of getting somebody to consent. Because if you have a person who lacks capacity that goes on to give consent, that is ultimately battery, because that person needs to have the capacity to weigh the risks and the benefits and alternatives of having that procedure, and also the risks and benefits of not having it. A lot of times we're so busy, we have so much to do, that as long as the patient agrees with us, of course they have capacity. It's when they disagree that we start to think, they don't have capacity. It has to be for both, okay? So just going like this is unfortunately not enough, and I like to put that clip art in there because, you know, as educated professionals, licensed professionals, we think we're doing an awesome job of presenting information to patients in a way they can understand, and they go like this and we think they've got it. But in reality, you could be saying it as plainly as you think can be plainly said, but really it just looks like a bunch of scribbly lines to them. They don't understand. So, and we can prevent a lot of problems if we take the time in the beginning before we get too far. Okay, treatment of the unrepresented patient. So, yes, sir.
The whole myth about the double doc.
Urban legend number one. All right. Okay, so if you want to read exactly about it, I have a feeling you'll just trust me, but if you wanted to really read exactly what it says about emergent procedures, it's in the consent policy. But basically, one doctor, the attending physician for that patient, gets to make that determination. If there is an immediate threat to life or limb, it becomes a level 1. They don't need a consent form. All that they have to do is write a progress note that explains why they feel it's an emergency, and that because it's such an emergency, there isn't time to waste getting consent, they can move forward. They don't need another doctor to come and sign it. If you do a consent form, where that patient's signature would be, what I've recommended that you do is just write there clearly, emergent procedure, see progress note, date and time. So we can refer back to that physician's progress note.
And then you can do the same thing for giving blood also, right, to a patient? I mean, would you...
Oh yeah, if they're bleeding out? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you recommend going ahead and getting the consent and writing that on?
You could. I think that would be best. I think that would be best only because if something comes about later on, the first thing anybody who's reviewing the case is going to do is look for the consent, and then the absence of said consent is going to get people's anxiety levels up. I think just writing on there, you can obviously do it afterward, because the priority is the care of the patient. Don't delay care to write something out like that, but at some point get that in there so that if anybody references it, they can say, oh yeah, it was an emergency, that's why we did it that way. But the policy protects you for that, okay?
I think that's good, Dan, because so many people believe double down is still appropriate, then they're skipping that step of what the policy is really expecting. So if they're putting 2 signatures on the consent, and there's no note reflecting
Right.
why this has to happen, then they're not adhering to our policy. So we actually pulled that, just for and I the other day, just to reassure her that it didn't need 2 signatures on the consent.
And then, for when we're talking a non-emergent situation and you have somebody who is otherwise incapacitated, intubated, sedated, or just altered, and clearly does not have capacity, then we start to wonder, who can we get consent from? So I want to sort of clarify another urban legend. A lot of staff feel like that family member who's willing to be a part of it and give consent, that person needs to present some kind of a document, a DPOA, a conservator. They don't need to, if it's a family member, they don't need to do that. What's required of us is that we do our due diligence. Who is this person? Is this person a relative? If yes, is this person willing to be the medical decision maker? If yes, do we feel, in our professional opinion, and it's all of us, it's not just social work, not just physicians, the nursing too, do we feel like this individual is going to have the patient's best interests in mind in being the decision maker? If yes, may proceed. Have you can write a note, have social work write a note. It's important to sort of memorialize that in the record and say, this person was incapacitated, we had some procedures we needed to do, had a family meeting, we arrived at the treatment team arrived at the decision that, mom is going to be the decision maker or spouse, whatever it may be, okay? No one needs to bring any kind of a certificate to prove to us. As long as they're willing and able, then we're good. Okay.
But there is a hierarchy, like let's say
There's
you
not.
have like a mother and a wife and the daughter all arguing, I don't want this, he should only have that, then...
So there's no legal hierarchy for consent. So they're all on equal footing. The only items, the only types of situations that even surpass that is when somebody is conserved, because there could be 50 million family members, but if the court has said they have a public guardian, that's it. It doesn't matter what the family says, we go with what the public guardian says. So that's the only time it gets trumped. But other than, in the absence of that or an advance directive, we go through, it's a much more of a gray process, but there is no specific hierarchy. I think some things are more common sense than others. If there's a spouse, of course you'd go with the spouse first, and you would go with maybe an older child or something, but it's not relegated that way.
Yeah.
So, yes, ma'am.
There used to be a hierarchy of, I think it was actually written in the policy, maybe it's not
So
there
it's still
anymore.
written in the policy, but it's inaccurate. I'm revising the policy, so I'm going to change that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
social work used to, that's what they would use as far as the person, that is.
Yeah, I just got a call, I think it was from Nell, like last week, and she's like, but it says it in the attachment. I'm like, I know it does, I'm working on it. I have it all ready to go, it just has to go through committees, but there truly is no hierarchy. And I'm going to add an additional attachment that actually comes from California Hospital Association that breaks it down even more for you. Yep.
Another question, we have a lot of adult patients, obviously, who have capacity, but have family members who want to make decisions for them. And they would, doctors would ask the family instead of asking the patient, getting consent from them. So it should go to the adult patient, right?
Yes.
Of themselves.
Yes.
So, what about have any kind of...
The gold standard is your adult patient that has capacity.
Right.
If they satisfy each of those things, They're the decision maker.
Then there's no
Now,
decision.
if they want to get the input and advice of their family, that's up to them to do. Our responsibility is primarily to the patient. You just run into trouble when maybe they're on some heavy duty meds, they're slightly out of it. Those are the times where everybody just kind of freaks out a little bit about, who do I go to? And with this particular policy, the unrepresented patient policy, it's going to be social work that's going to be the driver. They're the ones that are going to go through the valuables after they come in as a trauma and try to find other family members. They go so far as calling jails, other hospitals, public guardian's office to try to find a surrogate decision maker. But that's not the end of it. If they're unsuccessful and they can't find anybody, then we bring ethics committee in. We have an ethics consult, and then they usually will give a recommendation that it's okay for the treatment team to be the decision maker. And just know that the treatment team includes us as well. It's not just physicians. It should be all of us getting together. What do we think is best for this patient? Although I know it doesn't always work that way. Okay. I'm just going to skip this one. Yeah.
When opinion comes in,
Yeah.
if it's somebody who speaks Spanish, lately we used to have, if a nurse speaks Spanish very easily, can they translate? Now everything moves to Maltese. Is that what is
I just talked a lot about this earlier.
But now it's like they don't want the nurse anymore.
Okay.
Everything else.
Let me explain it to you this way. So, let's say I show up in the SI and I say to you guys, you know what? I think today I'm just going to take a day off of risk management and give me a patient. I want to take care of a patient. Would you let me? Why not?
Not near your skill level.
Exactly. Same thing for a bilingual person. So even though that might be their native language, there's no way for the rest of us to ascertain that they're competent in the context of certified medical interpreting. Okay? The UCSD interpreters that we have, the live people, and Marty, and the telephone, those are certified medical interpreters. Now, some hospitals have things in place where they have a testing process, and anybody who's willing to be an interpreter while at work, they'll take the test, they pass the test, then they're allowed to be an interpreter. UCSD, unfortunately, does not have that in place. So that's why I advise against doing that, because particularly with informed consent, it's such a legal thing. We don't want anybody coming back and saying that nurse or that tech or whomever didn't really translate it correctly. I think they lied to me. If we have a certified medical interpreter, then the skill level of that person won't be called into question because they're certified.
What if a family member says, this is my daughter, and she's a nursing assistant, and I want her to translate for me?
It's our policy to use certified medical interpreters.
Okay. So,
Your daughter, if the patient is okay with your daughter being there, then fine. You're more than welcome to be present and participate in the conversation, but our policy is we use certified medical interpreters. And there's other reasons, sketchy reasons why they would want to do that, right? So, they really want us to go over and above what the patient's condition dictates, right? And the survivability kind of a situation. And so we don't want them filtering our message, right? So use that. Now, a fun thing that I just learned recently, any UCSD telephone, if you dial 171, that gets you the telephone interpreter. Just follow the prompt. So no more running around the unit to find the thing with the two handsets. Any phone. You put it on speaker. If it's like at the nurse's station, you put them on speaker, whatever you need, if Marty's being used. And even the patient phones, 171.
And
Okay.
it's good to remember that even if it's a family member that says they're certified or that they can translate, translating it directly is completely different than interpreting it with medical terminology.
True. And just like with you guys, you do your annual competencies for the various things you do that are unique to your unit. It's the same thing with the interpreters. They have annual competencies. So that's a process that we have built in to ensure that they're where they need to be. to do that kind of job, and we just don't have that set up for us. And I can tell you a story. I had a patient, the one time, because I used to do because I could speak Spanish, speak Portuguese, I would just do it. This lady, an older lady, she was a Jehovah's Witness. Doc went in, saw the patient, and said, I think you're going to need 2 units packed cells. However, he discussed it with her. Comes out to get me, and Cristina, will you witness this blood consent? I go talk to my patient in Spanish, and I say to her, okay, what did the doctor explain to you? I have to get blood. Okay, are you comfortable with that? Do you have it? Everything was fine. I witnessed, blood bank got it ready, I hung it. Not 15 minutes later, the son shows up, pissed off. My mom's a Jehovah's Witness, why are you doing this? It was this horrible thing, right? Obviously nothing came of it, I'm still here. But for me it was like, I can't, even though I trust my own skills and I felt comfortable doing it, it's not a position that I want to be in because of reasons like that. I mean, because we're only trying to do the right thing, right? So.
Okay, so whenever you call risk management, or these are some of the events in which you would call risk management, any serious event which pertains to if a family threatens with litigation, half the time they're just saying it so you do whatever they're asking you to do because they're not happy with whatever you're presenting. Yes, they can threaten with litigation, but they still have to go through the process. They still have to send us a notice of intent and all that good stuff. So a lot of the times it's also because they're upset because they're not getting what they want, or the family's upset and they're angry for whatever reason. So risk management, as much as we would love to help you with that, it's not something our department handles. We can take a heads up for it and we'll document it, but it's a heads up and that's all it is. The department that's more appropriate to handle situations or being the liaison between providers, patients, and family members is the We Listen line. And if you don't know the We Listen number, it's 619-543.
Write this down.
5678. And you can refer the patients to call there and tell them, you know what, you can voice your concerns or there to that line, or you as a provider, as a nurse, can call them too. It's not just for patients. I know it's called the patient experience or patient transformation department, but it's also there for the providers. We also do help with...
The provider says, what are they reporting?
Let's say somebody tells you, you know what, I'm going to sue you because you did X and Y. And so instead of you saying, you know what, call them, they're already upset at you and you're going to tell them to do another, go through hurdles. You can just call them directly and say, you know what, somebody threatened me today that they were going to sue. The family's pretty upset, and that's it. They're going to be the liaison. They're going to call them and say, hey, so this is reported. Is everything going good? They're the liaison between the patients, trying to mediate the thing.
Because it could be, it's not necessarily that they're going to sue. They could just be saying that, trying to get somebody's attention. And we want to give patient experience an opportunity to do some service recovery first, because it's about making it right with the patient in that moment. It may come to litigation later, but we got to do that piece first.
Twice in my career I had a detective come in and try and hand me paperwork, but it's like at midnight or 11, wanting subpoena of paperwork, and I know they can't do that.
Okay, so
you just call
here.
telecom and say, and then I had another attorney come in at like 10 o'clock at night saying, I want this now, and it doesn't happen.
Like they're investigating a crime.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about that. Let me just go through the other things. So other things that you could call about is patient behavior. I'm saying that We Listen is there also for the providers, because let's say the patient is being violent towards you. You can call and give us a heads up, and maybe we have the issue, and you call We Listen, and then again they try to mediate the situation and see what was wrong or why the patient was upset. But you can call us and we can look into it. A patient that has a history and they actually had a behavioral contract in the past. Or if they didn't have a behavioral contract in the past and it's something that's reoccurring, it's something that our department helps with, a behavioral contract, because if this patient is really it's a problem patient for us, it's something that it's going, one provider, he's already been switched to a different provider, and it's always the same thing. It's not a problem of his care and treatment, it's more of the patient, and a lot of the times we can dismiss them. and not have to see them.
So you're establishing a record.
Yeah.
So we establish a record.
Yeah.
And then.
But, you know, if you have somebody violent, safety first.
Yeah,
You
security.
go security for, you know, you get everybody safe first, and then we can handle the aftermath of it.
We also help with consents and risk management education, so you're getting CEs for this. Or you can go onto the ELM website if you haven't attended one of our presentations. Now, in terms of subpoenas and depositions, we prefer that they all go through risk management, but that's for personal appearance or depositions. When it has to do with medical records, it goes to medical records. They have their own process for that. So let's say, like you said, they try to serve you at 11 at night or 1 in the morning or whatever time it is. You can tell that a lot of the times they could just drop serve it, but that's not our process. It's improper service. So, you know, they could drop serve it and they leave. You can get it, scan it over to me, and we'll contact the attorney just so that you don't have to deal with them. We'll contact the attorney, let them know, you know what, it's improper service. This is the way we take our subpoenas. And if you want to get records, we direct them to the department.
But what you're saying, I mean, I'm guessing, like, I don't know, a drunk driving victim gets brought in and the police want to ascertain, like, the patient's condition.
Daughter had hit the person that was in trauma.
Oh, that's so wildly inappropriate.
I found that out later.
Yeah, no, you tell, and so that's why that medical records handles those requests, because they're the experts in that
And that's
stuff.
why he was there at midnight. And then the other person that came in she was in law school trying to spell out all this different stuff and hand me paperwork at like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, no, nothing.
And for when you call in, the information, well, I usually answer the phone, so this is the face on the other side of the phone. Usually it makes both mine and your job easier if your name, your title, and your department, and it's a callback number just in case we miss things or we need more information. The patient information, I know sometimes you call and all you have is the name. You can just give me that name and then call later and give us the medical record number. It just makes it easier to track information. Let's say the patient has a history or to look up eye reports. It makes it easier. And then what I usually ask for the situation. So a lot of the times people don't want to talk to me because I'm the executive assistant, not the lawyer or the nurse or the risk manager. But realistically, because risk management has different people working there, a lot of the times you think it's a situation that has to go to our department, and sometimes it doesn't have to do with us. Like, I get a lot of calls saying, can we release information for this? Well, I'd like to help you, but we're not the experts in that. It would have to go to the privacy department. So it's easier if, you know, you're cooperative, and then I can go ahead and
Be nice when you talk to Crystal.
triage you to the right department. I want to help you too, so if you give me information, I'll know where to send you.
And depending on the day, I mean, the volume varies. So it goes in waves, and sometimes we get all these frantic calls about different situations, and it helps, you know, me, because I'm going to triage it too. Like, who do I need to call back first, depending on the situation? And it helps me to do, like, I like to look at the patient's record first to get an idea of what's going on. I'm going to skip a couple of these because I really, really, really wanted to talk about this. So was anybody that's here involved in that young man, the motorcycle? I know Juana was, because we were on the phone all weekend. So I got all this really great information from Lisa Stroud. She is the head honcha over at Life Sharing. And she had all of her sort of documentation in place. And I said, you know, Lisa, I'm sure this is going to come up again, so why don't you share what you have with me? So that way when they call us, I can just give them the information directly and save some time. So this is just really to help reassure you guys. So she sent me the California Motor Vehicle Code. She sent me some attorney's opinions that were given to a state representative. And she also sent to me opinions from our UCOP attorneys. And we ran all of that by our campus council with this most recent one. So now we're all on the same page. If you have somebody who is 18 or older, when they go to the DMV, if they check that box and that pink dot is on there, that's it. That is consent. No, and furthermore, no one can take it away. Not a parent, not a spouse, not a boyfriend. It doesn't matter. So, look at the second bullet. The enrollment of the donor shall constitute a legal document pursuant to the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act and shall remain binding after the donor's death despite any desires of next of kin opposed to the donation. We don't have to be mean about it, obviously. It's a very difficult situation, but I heard sort of after the fact that there were some people that were really uncomfortable, not necessarily nursing, but some members of the team were uncomfortable and wanted reassurance. So this is here to reassure you. And what Lisa does on her end is funny because she already had it ready for me when I asked her. She had already gone, there's a secure donor registry, state of California, and so any organ procurement organization, such as Life Sharing, has access to that registry. And they're going to go and they're going to validate that this person is a donor. And they're going to make sure that the time that they checked yes to being a donor, that they were over 18. The only time that a parent can step in is if the minor made themselves a donor but without parental consent. Okay, does that help everybody feel better? Of course, we're not going to say, too bad, so sad, we're going to, but of course we're going to give them time to grieve, and we're going to use, Life Sharing, that's what they do. Use them and do what we need to do to make it as, I don't know, it's not going to be a happy situation, but as good as it could possibly be for them. They need to grieve too, and it's obviously a shock, and you only run into these situations when the organ donor hasn't communicated to their family members that they wanted to be donors. So they're just finding out just like us. So of course, be kind. I'm sure you will, of course, but rest assured that that's a legal document. There's the proof. Okay, any questions? I am sorry we went over time. I can come back anytime, but I won't be taking care of your patients because that would not be appropriate. Oh, and if you guys, thank you.